Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Arevalo. I'm the Director of Community Health and Wellness at Montefiore Nyack. And here is the community chat of July 14, 2022. Today, we're going to be talking about picky eating. There are a lot of kids out there that give their parents nightmares because they don't eat enough or they don't eat what we need them to eat. And it's very hard to deal with that behavior. So today with us, we have 4 different experts, all registered dietitian, nutritionist, and a dietetic intern that are going to talk to us about that problem and hopefully give us very good tips that you can take home and try with your kids if that's a problem that you're going through. So first of all, I'm going to start asking each one of our speakers to introduce themselves, who they are, where they work, and what their experience is. And also, I just want to remind all of our attendees that we like to have interactive sessions. What that means is that please take the opportunity to have these experts with us. Ask all your questions, use the chat box, the Q&A box, just write them there, and I'll be more than happy to read the questions to our experts to get you the answers that you're looking for. So without further ado, let's start. I'm gonna go in order in my screen. So Elizabeth Stem, welcome. Do you wanna tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks. I'm a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. And in the past, I have worked with kids with obesity, and currently I also run a group for mothers for postpartum weight loss. And we also do some sessions about how to help promote healthy eating with your kids.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Merced?
Hi, everybody. My name is Merced. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm working at the Bronx Health Collective. I currently work with both adults and kids, usually from anywhere from like 5-ish years old all the way to teenagers. And I also have quite a bit of experience working in a nutrition education field with kids, elementary school age kids, and getting them used to trying new foods, cooking new foods, a variety of foods. Yeah.
Thank you, Merced. Jessica?
Hi, my name is Jessica Shapiro. I'm a registered dietitian and also a certified diabetes education care specialist as well. My experience, I've been at Montefiore for almost 14 years. I've worked with mostly adults and a lot of times with talking about their problems with their kids. And also I have firsthand experience with my kids.
Yes, that makes you an expert, definitely. Gabriela, welcome to Community Chats.
Hi, I'm Gabriela Gonzalez. I am a dietetic intern here at the South Bronx Collective at Montefiore. And a little bit of my experience with kids especially is I've done rotations with Children's Aid in their cooking programs and trying to get children to kind of expand their palate a little bit more in that direction. And I do have a pretty big family with a lot of littles that I've seen a little bit here and there.
Yes, it's a life experience, the best experience. Okay, so let's start. And when we say my kid is a picky eater, what does picky eating really mean? What does that refer to? And what health consequences does it have? Elizabeth?
Yeah, so picky eating, I would tend to call it like very selective eating, where kids are often only willing to eat a certain few foods and are kind of afraid of trying new foods. And now I already forgot the other part of your question.
Let's start with that, and then we'll go back to the second part, which is what health consequences can that bring, right? So, but let's start with what's picky eating. Anyone who wants to add to Elizabeth's comments?
I would just say that just to piggyback on what Elizabeth said, a child who is a picky eater might be selective in a type of food, whether it be like staying away from entire groups like all vegetables, all fruit, or certain types of fruit or vegetables. And also, it could be because there's many reasons. There's not just one reason on why they might be a picky eater. And some of the reasons are that they're just phases that they go through. And some reasons could be a little bit more complex.
Mhm. And Jessica, you're mentioning something very interesting, phases. So are there different age ranges or certain age ranges where picky eating is more pronounced?
Yeah, definitely in the beginning of their life. And whatever anybody tells you, you know, even for my own kids, like until they were 2, my kids would eat anything. So it was 2 when things really started to turn south. Though I know some kids, it's earlier than 2 it starts. And then, you know, just depending on how you go with it, it can continue a lot longer or shorter, or it really depends on why the child is a picky eater. I just saw someone wrote about someone having a kid having allergies. So that could be a reason why a child might be a picky eater.
Mm-hmm. Merced?
I don't have much to add to what you both said. I think you both kind of really hit it on the dot, where it was, you know, like maybe a picky eater is not having some food groups. In terms of the consequences, some of the things that might happen is that we might see like inadequate growth from a child. We might see some vitamin deficiencies if they're not getting a variety of foods, a variety of food groups from there. So those are some of the different things.
Mm-hmm.
As well as a lot of times you can see a lot of constipation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Picky eaters are often not eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and all the foods that provide fiber. And then they can even sometimes end up afraid to go to the bathroom because it hurts because they aren't eating foods that help them to have soft and comfortable stools.
Mm-hmm. And yes, so here is a comment. My 3-year-old son has allergies to nut, dairy, and eggs, which is a challenge in itself. But of course, he's also picky and doesn't like to try new things. So that makes sense. If you've been sick eating food, you're probably scared of eating other foods. So that might be one reason why you become a picky eater. Are there any other reasons why children become picky eaters? Elizabeth, you just mentioned constipation. Now, is the constipation a consequence of picky eating, or is the reverse, right? Like if you're picky eating, either you're constipated, or maybe you're constipated and for the reason do you become a picky eater? How is that?
Well, I mean, it could be either way, because it could be that some children have some gastrointestinal issues and then they eat things and those things cause unpleasant consequences that makes them scared to eat other things. But I think the majority of the time, the most common problem we have is that children are exposed to a lot of I would say extremely palatable foods, right? Like foods with sugar, foods with fat, foods with salt. And these foods are kind of like biologically very attractive to us. They taste great. So then if your child is exposed to it, they're not going to say, oh, but you know, if I eat a lot of this in 50 years, this is going to make me unhealthy, or, you know, so they just see the instant reward, which is the pleasure of eating it in the moment. They don't necessarily see the, you know, the benefits. So that's why a big part of, you know, helping them to eat healthier so that they won't end up with constipation, which is what I think happens most of the time, is trying to control the food environment around them. And you know, Jessica had said about picky eating starts to show up more around 2 years old. And I think some of that, like you said, is just phases. And but also as they get older and older, at least with my kids, I really noticed how when they were 1 and then somewhat when they were 2, I could control what foods were around them. And as they got older and went to more birthday parties and went to school, you know, a lot more of that control is, you know, and as your family life gets more stressful and you can't be on top of things as much, they get more and more exposed to the less healthy foods with salt and sugar and fat, and they start to want those and they start to also fight back about it more. So it makes it more difficult. But your job as the parent is to attempt as much as you can to provide a healthy food environment where, you know, you're buying foods that are healthy for them, like lots of fruits and vegetables with fiber, or lean meats, or low-fat dairy, or nuts and seeds and beans and whole grains, more of those foods and less of the sugary drinks and, chips and really, fried chicken, sugary desserts. So you want to mostly have healthy foods around, because if that's what's around, then they're going to pick amongst those foods that you offer them.
And Elizabeth, you're helping me remember a lot of the things that I learned. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist myself. So I used to work with pregnant moms and small children as well. And you're making me remember how sometimes mothers used to bring me their children and, express that they were picky eaters and they were concerned that they would only eat. I remember this one patient who said, my son only eats pizza and chicken fingers. That's it, nothing more. And then, in working with this mom, I ended up asking her, what did you eat the most when you were pregnant? And guess what she said? She's like, oh, I had the worst cravings with pizza and chicken fingers. So where does picky eating start? That leads me to believe that, you're saying it, as parents, we have some sort of, I don't want to say guilt, because we're not guilty. We're trying to do the best that we can. It's just that we don't know better sometimes. But,
Yeah.
Sometimes this starts from pregnancy, right? Like we're just not putting the right foods in our bellies for our baby that is growing, and then we see the consequences a little later. Jessica, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I really just also want to stress that a lot of times, though, has nothing to do with the family. It could be some structural issue in the mouth, which needs to be addressed, and a texture thing. I know my older son hates melted cheese because of the texture is slimy to him. So, and whether or not these issues that are more related to the texture or are real issues and like a real reason for them to avoid it, or maybe there's an underlying cause of why they might feel a way about a texture, which could be related to autism. But also when we're very young, like the kids don't necessarily want to label a child or diagnosed with something, but knowing that there are still, either way, it's still the same way to address those issues, working with therapists most likely. Yes.
So it's important that you try different foods, and you just said something very important. If you notice that it's certain, because I myself, I can't eat the slimy foods no matter what, I got. And it's not like I'm a picky child, definitely not a child anymore, maybe picky, but not a child. But it's important sometimes to work with a speech therapist for this, right? So that they can help your kid taste different foods and see if the swallowing is okay, the chewing is okay. So yeah, thank you for that, Jessica, because sometimes we forget that we have that other solution, let's say, when we work with a speech therapist. Merced.
And then I think your original question, I was kind of trying to keep track of the original question, which was, why does it happen, right? Is that correct?
Yes. So
yes. Okay. Yeah. So another thing that I was going to
how people become picky eaters,
how they become picky eaters. Yes. So another thing, like Elizabeth mentioned, like making sure that you're having the exposures to these foods, right? Because as babies, you're not really born knowing how to eat. Like it's a new experience. You were in mommy's belly and now you have to learn how to breastfeed. And then similar as we're growing older, like we're learning how to eat. Like all of these are learning experiences. And as parents, that's like the parents' role to provide those opportunities, provide the opportunities for kids to be exposed to a variety of foods. So if they don't know that that broccoli exists, then it's not going to exist. Similar with like French fries and any type of food, right? So it's a parent's role to introduce those foods, provide variety, whatever it is, for then the kids to learn that it's available, and then to learn that they can eat it and enjoy it over time.
Modeling.
Yeah, and is this true that it needs at least 20 times to try a food before we get to even accept it.
It can, often it can take up to that amount. It depends on the child. And I think that it's hard too, because you might say, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to give broccoli to my child. And if I just do it 20 times, then they're going to eat it. But that's not necessarily the case, right? I think that, like Jessica said, modeling, like we're being an example. I'm willing to try new fruits and vegetables. I'm willing to try new ways it's prepared. It's okay if I don't like it too. Like I hate cantaloupe, I hate celery, but I'm going to try different fruits and vegetables, and I'm going to eat the other ones that I do like, right? I'm going to make sure to include them as part of my meals because they're really important for my body, for my hair and my eyes and my energy level. So I'm really happy and eating these things, and I can share that with my kids. I don't want to get super frustrated if they don't want to eat it. I want to praise them if they're brave and they try it. Maybe they smell it, maybe they touch it, maybe they put it in their mouth and spit it out. That's great because they're trying, right? They're open to trying something new. And if they try it and they like it, okay, great. You found that you like string beans and you like broccoli, but you hate cauliflower. That's okay. I might still have cauliflower as my vegetable sometimes still, because I'm not going to take it off my menu just because one of my children won't eat it anymore, right? Like when I serve a meal, I might serve 3 or 4 healthy items. Maybe one is something familiar that I know my kids always eat, but maybe my daughter is going to eat the string beans and my son is going to refuse them, and my son is going to have the tofu and my daughter isn't going to eat it. That's what happens pretty much every night, right? So I try to balance things out, and I know that probably over the course of the week, my daughter is still going to get enough protein and my son is still going to get enough vegetables, even if that night they weren't willing to eat those foods.
I kind of love that right there you mentioned the spitting out the food, because for me growing up, that was bad. So it was expected for me to receive what was on my plate and just kind of like eat it, and not have a reaction to like make a face at it or even smell it, right? Spitting, definitely a no-no, but that's actually a win, right? Like because it's like the kids are being brave enough to just kind of like take a bite of the food, and maybe they don't like it, and that's okay, because we just don't like everything that we try, but it's like a small win, and it's a small win in the right direction too.
And there's a difference. Like you could try something and politely spit it out of your mouth or take it out of your mouth, as opposed to like, mommy, why did you make this disgusting? You can say, oh, well, I'm trying new things and it hurts my feelings when you call it disgusting. You can still be polite, but have the right, because kids have the right to decide, like we as parents decide what foods we're going to buy, what foods we're going to offer at each meal or snack. We're going to decide when are we going to offer meals and snacks, where are you allowed to eat in our house? But then the kids get to decide, am I going to try this food or not? Am I going to eat this food or not? How much do I want to eat of this food, right? Because it's their body and they should get to decide what goes in their body.
Yeah, and I also feel that, especially when we're introducing new foods to babies, and here I'm talking babies like 6 months to 1, what's their, they have the same reaction. You put something in their mouth and they immediately go, like, you don't like it. And I've seen moms that they go and they say, oh, he didn't like it, she didn't like it. I'm like, oh my God, all babies do the same. You have to give them the time, and try it a few times, because all babies automatically are going to try to take that out of their mouth because they're only used to milk. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the funny face happens and then they ask for more. But I do have to jump off, but I want to say one quick story. So my 2 kids are very different in their eating habits. One eats raw vegetables, loves them, eat them so much. The other one would eat a vegetable, but then spit it out and throw it at me. Okay, so but he's 5, and that happened forever. So I kept on serving the vegetables, kept on serving, put him on his plate, put him in his lunchbox, asked him to take a bite. And over a couple of years, he went from eating no vegetables to, like, if I ask him to take a bite, he'll take a bite and then give me the rest, or give it to a dog who won't eat it, to him actually asking to eat something like tomatoes or cucumbers or peppers. So it took a bunch of years, persistent, no reaction. And he's finally starting to open up a little bit. So I say, don't give up no matter what. That's going to be my final thing, is just look for the underlying issues if there are any. And if there's nothing really significant, then don't give up.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. And thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
I know you have a meeting to go to, so I'm sorry we had to cut you short, and we couldn't enjoy your presence for the whole hour, but thank you for this time that you have shared with us. Okay, so I know there are mothers out there, and especially it's hard with fruits and vegetables. Vegetables first, you know, and this is actually, now that I say vegetables first, again, going back to my other life years ago, that's something that we used to tell mothers: vegetables first. When you're introducing solid foods, start with the vegetables, because the vegetables don't taste as good as fruits. Once you start feeling sweetness, you know, you want to stick to the sweetness, and don't try the vegetables, which, you know, it's scientifically proven, by the way, that when children eat vegetables, they taste bitterness. So they have a reason why not to like them. But again, as Jessica was saying, you have to keep insisting. Any other tips that we can share with these mothers who are struggling because they want their kids to eat their vegetables? They know that it's important, and we're trying. And maybe you can share in the chat how you're trying with your kids, and then we can bring that to our panel to see, you know, if it works or if it doesn't work so much. So I invite all of our attendees to start typing and sharing with us. But in the meantime, what do we do?
Well, one thing I think is good is to create like positive, fun experiences with your vegetables. Like my grandmother and I used to make a salad plate, and we would carve little faces into our cucumber, and we would make roses out of the radish, and we would decorate it. And it was such a fun experience. And then because you've done such a fun thing, you are more excited as a kid about trying those vegetables, right? Or, you know, I've done like taste tests. Okay, we're going to put these vegetables here, and then we're going to get to each rate them with the sad face, the neutral face, the happy face. How do we feel about all these different vegetables? Now somebody cares. It's like they're a food critic, you know. Another thing is you can use, like, for instance, we don't want to be using lots of ranch dressing or something like that, but sometimes if you put a little ranch dressing or light ranch dressing or some kind, you know, your child really loves lemon juice or whatever it is, you can put those flavors in to kind of give them something that they enjoy to associate with the vegetables that they're eating, right? Or, you know, we were talking about textures and different things like that. Sometimes, like, your kid might not like boiled carrots, but they do like roasted carrots, right? A lot of times roasting vegetables brings out a little bit of almost like a sweetness in the flavor of the vegetables. So if you chop them up and you roast them, sometimes you'll find that kids like it that way. Or my son loves to eat the vegetables when they're in a vegetable noodle soup. So there are just different ways you can try to make it more fun or more attractive or tasty for them to eat.
Thank you, Elizabeth. What do you recommend, Marcel, when you're working with your moms?
Yeah, so I definitely I love that you're mentioning all of these options, and all of that just kind of brings together like the repeated exposures, right? So like you're trying the veggies, the fruits in multiple ways, and right now just kind of focusing on veggies, right? Trying them in multiple ways, offering them in multiple shapes. Sometimes kids may not like something cooked, but maybe they like it raw. Something else that I was going to say is exposure to new foods doesn't always happen only at mealtime. Elizabeth already mentioned like kind of using food to play with, but it could also be without any real food at all, right? I love this example that Gabriela mentioned recently, which is just like to play with like food models. So like if you're having some playtime with your child, like having some fruits and veggies there, going shopping with like toys, or even going shopping together with your kids at the supermarket, right? Having them be at the supermarket, at the farmer's market, choosing out things by themselves, like then they can like feel them, smell them, talk about the colors. So just kind of, there's no expectation for the kids at that point to eat the food, right? Which can also sometimes prevent kids from trying new foods when they're getting too much pressure to try something new. They're just like, no, I'm just gonna do my best, do everything I can to stay away from it. So in these other times when there's no expectation to eat, they are more likely to interact with the new food.
Gabriela, what are your tips?
From what Merced was saying, just like I would have started with going to the store, right? Like having that child help you make that decision, or even having the child help you with the menu, or help you with like having them as a little sous chef, depending on how old they are, and like having them see not just here's food in front of you, but having them see the whole process. And children are very curious, and you don't know at what point is going to pique their interest for them to say like, oh, I saw this at the store, I picked out, had a really nice color. Now the color's a little different, but I still know what it is. Maybe I can still try it. Some kids are attracted to some colors more than others. So I think, if your child is really into purple, like maybe try purple cabbage, or, something a color that already is calling their mind, and kind of go down that avenue, picking a feature that they really love and try to introduce things on that side.
And I think that, as Jessica was saying, modeling, I think, goes a long way, because sometimes, either we don't eat with our children, we serve our children first or later or whatever, and we are not eating the same meal. It's like, no, you need to eat your vegetables, but not me, right? As the mother. Or if we are eating together, I just go like, no, but you need to eat it because you're little and you need it. I'm not. So I think that you all need to be in the same page at home, and make sure that everybody tries, and make a good face when you're trying it, as hard as it is, right? But children look at all these things, and especially little ones, they are like, well, you don't like it and I have to eat it, they're smart. So that's something very important, that, we need to model the behaviors that we want them to follow.
Also, like Gabriela was talking about, going to the supermarket, and another thing that has been good for my kids is we have a vegetable garden. And if you don't have space for a vegetable garden, you can even have, just a couple of pots. And so growing tomatoes in the summer, or string beans, it's exciting to see the plants grow and see how things develop. Or you were talking about the colors, like when you grow your own vegetables, we've grown like purple cauliflowers and golden beets and purple or striped string beans, just because it's fun and it makes them more interested in them. I think they, again, have more ownership of it, just like if they went to the supermarket to pick something out, or they were involved in planning the menu or preparing the meal, right?
Pumpkin picking, apple picking. I don't know anyone who's not apple picking and not eating an apple. It's true, because you just see so many of them, you just want to eat them, right? Okay, let's talk about different ways of cooking vegetables or preparing vegetables and fruits and all of that moms can try to see if the kids like it. For example, okay, I'll try the steamed broccoli, it's not working. Are there any other ways how I can offer broccoli or any other vegetables to see if they are more interesting to their kids?
I would say one of the first things that I encourage parents to try is to identify foods that kids already like, right? So like identifying what foods they like. Like, do they like, I'm just thinking of right now, you mentioned the green veggies. So like maybe they mostly eat like chicken nuggets or mac and cheese or whatever it is, right? So it's like, if we can combine those two foods in a certain way, that could be like a little bridge to helping the child try the new food. So can you try, Sandra, you said string beans or broccoli?
Broccoli.
Broccoli, right? So could you maybe serve like the mac and cheese with a little bit of broccoli on the side, right? Or could you maybe sprinkle some of the cheese sauce from the mac and cheese on the broccoli itself? So that way you have like a pairing where it's like you're offering your child a food that they already like and a food that is new. So it doesn't seem as scary if they're just kind of receiving like the new food by itself.
So you mean putting the broccoli in the mac and cheese?
It could be. It depends on the child's readiness, right? It depends on the child's readiness. Some children, they may not want to see the new food on their plate. Like they might not want to have it on their own plate. So maybe it could be like offering the veggie on like a little side plate, right? So it's not in their plate. But if you feel like they are ready to get the broccoli inside the mac and cheese, that could also be something to try. So it really depends.
Remind me how I came up with the rainbow mac and cheese. I don't know if you still make it for the kids over there in the South Bronx, but you know, every kid loves mac and cheese. And if they don't like vegetables, I just add mixed vegetables to the mac and cheese. So now it's all mixed with the mac and cheese, but it gets all that flavor from the cheese and all of that. So far, it's been a success. I don't know one single kid who doesn't like it. And now they are eating vegetables with the mac and cheese. You know, it's carrots, anything that is in mixed vegetables. So I think that mixing, it's a really good idea. Or like, for example, if they like rice, I see somebody is like, it's a great lover of carbs. So if they like rice, for example, you can add mixed vegetables to your rice or some sort of vegetables, peppers, something like that, give flavor to the rice, and at the same time you get them to eat vegetables. Or as Jessica was saying, you can add vegetables to a soup, you know, different ways of preparing it. Any other ideas, ladies?
Well, I just think that that idea, like Merced was saying, you have to really see where your child is at, because sometimes it works. Like sometimes you mix it with the mac and cheese, you mix it with the rice or whatever, and now they're willing to eat it. And other times you have just made dinner and now your child will not eat anything. Because all together in the same pot, and they're like, and you've kind of, again, like to them, to us, it might be like, fine, pick it out or whatever, but they are like, oh my God, no, this is contaminating my rice and I don't want to eat it. I guess, again, depending on their sensory issues or how picky they are. So, so it depends. But for example, my kids, like I realized that I'm tired and I don't have time to make a complicated meal most of the time. So for example, sometimes our meal is scrambled eggs and whole wheat toast. And we always eat boiled baby carrots with it. So because I always served it to my kids since they were small, they think this is normal. And so they always just eat the carrots with it. They were never like, you're trying to get us to eat vegetables with it, because that's just what you eat with scrambled eggs. So, you know.
So my face. Talking about modeling.
So I wanted them to eat, you know, like the eggs with, you know, like tomatoes and scallions or whatever mixed in, but that didn't work for them, but they do eat the carrots on the side.
And you just used a word that I think goes very well with this situation, frustration. I think as mothers, we all feel frustrated because we try one thing and another, and then they don't eat. And of course we get worried, right? Like we get worried that they don't eat. And I think that one thing that we've all done as mothers is, oh, if you don't want to eat this, then let me prepare you that. I see your faces. You know.
Yeah, the short order chef or whatever. It can be such a problem, right? Because then you're not giving them the chance, like you're not really determining what foods you're going to offer, which is your job, because your child said, I won't eat it. And then you go run to the kitchen to make them something else. So you have to give them the chance to try the things you've offered. That's why I think if you want a variety of foods, like 3 or 4 things you're offering in the meal, and you want to hopefully choose at least one that you know your child will eat so that they're not going hungry. But there are some other options. Like right now, that's what I do with my kids and that's it. But when they were going through a particularly picky phase and like a little bit of a power struggle phase when they were younger, what I would do is have something that took minimal effort to prepare, and that was their boring alternative meal. So it could be like a yogurt, or it could be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or it could be like we had a vegan frozen burrito with beans and rice in it. So they didn't get to say, oh, but I want scrambled eggs, or I want this or that. And they didn't get to ask for something that would cause me any significant work. But if they said, oh no, this vegetable chicken soup you made is horrible, I would say, well, you can go put your burrito in the microwave if you want, right? But I'm not going to choose chicken fingers or pizza, something that's work, or something that is so delicious that they're going to be constantly rejecting the real meal for it, right? Like if all you have is a yogurt, you're just saying, okay, well, I'm taking this yogurt because I really hate everything, and this way I won't be hungry.
So it's kind of like your plan B is as boring as plan A.
Exactly. But if you hate plan A and you find it disgusting, then you have plan B, and you're legitimately can't eat anything. But like I said, right now for me, with my kids, it works better to just have a food in the meal that I know they're going to eat. And we haven't had to offer an alternative like that, but sometimes depending on the situation, that can be the best option.
And then also sometimes it can also be, you know, like maybe they're just not hungry, right? Maybe it's like a power struggle thing, but maybe they're just not hungry at that point when you're offering dinner time. So I love the idea that Elizabeth suggested of having like 1 or 2 sides that you know your child will eat and maybe some other new food there. But if they really don't want to eat, like just kind of letting your child be like, okay, you know, letting them trust their instincts that they're not hungry at the moment, but then maybe like half an hour later, however long it takes, coming back to those meals, and you know that there are like 2 options there that they could eat as well.
Okay, I think you touched on a good point there, Merced, because, you know, this is something that I also see happening with my patients, like, oh, you don't want to eat now, but then, you know, 15 minutes later, it's like, okay, here is a bag of chips because you haven't eaten anything, or here is a little bit whatever because you haven't eaten anything. And, you know, then basically you hit the next meal time and you're full because you've been snacking all afternoon because you didn't eat lunch. So meal times, what do you think? Meal times, should we like 8 o'clock breakfast, 12 o'clock lunch, 4 o'clock snacks, 6 o'clock dinner, things like that, so that people get used to eating at certain times and not snacking all day? Thoughts?
So, oh, do you want to talk, Gabrielle?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, like, definitely that idea. You know, every kid is a little bit different, like having some type of structure, like open kitchen, closed kitchen, like food is ready now. You have a window, right? Like, you know, not all kids are going to just run right away. But I was also going to say, like, you know your child best. And I think sometimes we think that we want to introduce the new vegetable or whatever at the main meal. But if that's not when they're usually hungry anyway, then maybe you're going to have a little harder time at that point. So like if your kid is a morning eater, Sandra, you're muted. If you're a morning eater, then maybe try to find ways to introduce that new thing in the morning. If your child is like appetite is highest in the morning. If your child is more of an evening eater and that's when they're hungriest and have the biggest appetite, maybe that is the best time to introduce it, right? Like finding out what their pattern is, making sure you have some type of consistency and working with them instead of at them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a good point that, you know, sometimes we think of snacks as like, oh, chips and unhealthy foods, but snacks can be just as healthy as meals, because snacks could be hummus and whole grain crackers and vegetables, or nuts and fruits, right? Or different things like that. So, you know, it could be a perfectly good time to introduce some new vegetables. But again, I think that everybody's kids are a little different. They're a little different, but some different strategies that I think are helpful. Like I do think it's helpful for the parent to determine the meal time and the snack time. Again, I think it was easier for me when my kids were younger, when I wasn't working as many hours. I feel like things have gotten a little more out of control, but that issue of I still would say if we're eating a meal now, it's 5:30. And so, you know, we're not going to have a snack until 7:30 or something like that. So you need to make sure that you're going to eat something now if you're hungry. But again, being that rigid doesn't always work. So a couple of things, like sometimes you might say, okay, you ate 2 bites of your lentils and vegetables, and now you say you're not hungry and you're off to play, and of course you're going to come back asking for something. I can leave this food out for you, so if you come back in the next half hour, here is your food. It is waiting for you, not like now it's time for chips, right?
Mm-hmm.
For my kids, if they get hungry when it's not a meal time or a snack time, or you know what always happens, you're like, I gotta get this dinner ready, and the kids are like, I'm so hungry, I'm dying, and you need to give me some cookies now. So I'd say, you know, dinner is going to be ready in 10 minutes. If you absolutely can't wait, you may have a fruit or you may have a vegetable. That's okay. If it's not mealtime and you want a fruit or a vegetable, it's okay. You know, if it's not snack time now, but we're not going to start eating chips or cookies or crackers or whatever right before supper.
What about carrot cake? Will that count as
I
vegetable?
would not count in this example, Sandra.
Sorry.
I mean, I also think that it's, it's important to also kind of put all foods on an equal level, right? So not highlighting that maybe like that we keep using broccoli as the example, right? That broccoli has like a lower value than like a piece of carrot cake or anything that your child loves, like a carrot cake, a chocolate, ice cream, right? So treating all the foods the same can also help with just kind of allowing your child to eat a variety of foods. Because when you make that chocolate much more desirable, they like it more. And when you restrict it more, they will do whatever they can to try to get it. Whereas if we're maybe offering, like, maybe you could try like offering dessert as like an after school snack, right? It's like something small that you can offer at that point. Or maybe you're offering a plate with like the fruits, the veggies, the grains, the protein, and also a candy bar on the side, right? But it's like everything is like at an equal level and there's no more value, which also just kind of brings me to the point of not using some of these like fun foods as rewards or bribes for eating what we might think as like the healthier foods.
Yeah.
Is it okay to mask some of these foods? For example, broccoli. If they don't like the plain broccoli or the steamed broccoli, to do the broccoli with the cheese on top. How do you call that again? I never eat that.
Well, it's like a flavor bridge, I guess you could call it, because like Mercedes was talking about it, it could be something kids enjoy, and then it could help them to begin to learn and accept the broccoli flavor. And maybe you can prepare it with a little less cheese sauce in the future and a little less, and then try introducing it again in different ways. So I think that's fine. But masking the flavor is also like, I have a special recipe for brownies and my kids will never know that there's broccoli inside of it. And I think it's not, I mean, if they like it, that special recipe, I think it's fine, but you're not actually helping them learn to eat broccoli, right? And maybe they're getting some tiny minimal nutritional value in there, but I always think like, because I think we're all like, oh, my kid eats no vegetables and it's so bad. But a big part of it is them learning over the course of years and years how to try new foods, how to be open to new things, how to eat healthy with you as their example. So if they're not eating broccoli now, but they're seeing you eating a variety of vegetables and slowly over time, kind of like in Jessica's example, learning to eat more, I think that's more important than that today I managed to get my kid to eat some broccoli, right? And exactly, they're learning, like Mercedes was talking about, that like you don't want to use unhealthy food as a bribe, because it's like kids are smart and they're like, oh, now I know this unhealthy food is the good stuff, and that broccoli, there must be something wrong with it because they're trying to bribe me to eat it, right? So, but it's also, I think it's like a balance of two things, because at the same time, we know that the food companies have designed the chocolate bars and the chips and to be super palatable and almost like addictive. So we just want to eat more and more and more. So if you put out like cookies and carrots and fruit and chips, kids are going to go more for the chips and the cookies because they just taste so great. So instead, we want to create a food environment where much of the time we have our, chicken and our rice or noodles and our, salad and whatever healthy foods. But then we're also offering those treats sometimes, to say all foods, like whatever the Dietetic Association says, all foods fit, but we do want to offer those healthy foods much more of the time, because that's what's going to help them learn to eat things that are going to benefit their body over time, right? So, that it can be hard to figure out how to do, but I think usually like the kids are in charge of how much to eat, but I don't want to put an unlimited amount of chocolate cake on the table for them to eat, because then they'll fill up on that. So that's why I think it makes sense to offer dessert, maybe offer it after the meal and say, okay, everybody, here's some for everybody who wants it, right? But not the giant piece, and then we're asking for more and more. It can be hard to do it sometimes. Or there are other things, like maybe my child loves white rice, and so every time I offer it at a meal, they want more and more and more. I don't want to tell them, you can't have that, you can only have 1 cup, or the alternative, we don't want to say, you need to eat more than that amount of broccoli. We want them to be in charge of what they're putting in their body. But if I see that there's an issue, I could always decide, okay, sometimes I like to make more, so I have leftovers because I'm tired and, it's in the fridge and it's easier. But if I notice that my child is eating more and more and more rice, I could say, hey, let's make sure everybody gets their portion of rice because everybody in the family needs to get some. And now at the end, maybe there's only a little bit left. So when William goes to have more rice, okay, you can have more rice, but look, it ran out. So now you've got a small amount more and that was that, right? So there are different ways. There's no perfect way, but there are different ways you can try to manage the supply of food so that they aren't overdoing things that are really, really tasty, but not good for them in large amounts.
And I think that having foods readily available is also important. So, obviously chips and cookies or cereal is always readily available. But if we have like a nice fruit salad in the fridge, or the baby carrots are like the first thing you see when you open the refrigerator, you're more likely to eat that. And then if you put the cookies all the way on top of your pantry where they can't be seen easily, well, you're gonna grab whatever is closer to your fingers, I guess, right? Things that you see on a daily basis. If I sporadically have apples at home, probably nobody's gonna feel like eating apples unless, I keep them like in a fruit bowl right on top of my table all the time, so that every time I pass by the table, I see the apple, then I feel like eating an apple because it's calling me, as we say, right? So having foods readily available I think is important too. If we cannot eat fruits and vegetables, can we drink them? Smoothies, for example?
You can drink them, like, again, it's just kind of like meeting your child where they are. If for some reason, like, they don't want to eat any fruits and veggies, can we try them in beverages? Yeah, absolutely. Like if you know that they like smoothies, that could be a good way to get them started. Over time, maybe you can make it a little bit more chunkier. You could try incorporating maybe a frozen smoothie, right? So it's like a little ice cream treat. So yeah, just kind of like, again, meeting your kid where they are and then just kind of helping them navigate through the different flavors, textures, colors.
I think we also, when you say drink them, a clarification does need to be made, you want to try to stay away from getting that bottle at the store that says it has 50,000 vegetables already in it, right? Because the fact of the matter is, those do come with a lot of side pieces that we want to turn a blind eye that they're also in that bottle. So if we are drinking them, we want to still show the child hey, this is the whole vegetable. This is what it is. And this is what I'm putting in the drink. And that way, what's in there, your kid knows what's in there, instead of just that drink, that juice or whatever that's already at the store. I think that's a clarification that's kind of necessary sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gabriela. That makes a very important point. Yes. We want to make it at home. We want to use the real ingredients. We don't want to use those commercial juices that say pure fruit or pure vegetable, because we know they're not. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned have your child help you make them too, right? So that they can see what's going in there. Because sometimes when they discover that there's a hidden food in their favorite recipe, they're like, oh, there's spinach in there? I don't want it anymore, right? So just kind of letting them know that these foods are there. And again, it just kind of goes back to creating these positive experiences with all types of foods, the fruits, veggies, as well.
Right. We make some smoothies and, my son liked making up his own recipe for the smoothie. Well, it needs 5 blackberries and 1 apple and, so it becomes a fun experience. But yeah, it's something another, Mercedes was saying, another opportunity to try to open them up to fruits and vegetables, not well, I can't get my kid to eat any fruits or vegetables, but as long as I give them juice, they're just fine, right? We want to use it as a
Dr. Sarah, can you please dial me on 224, Dr. Sarah 224?
Yeah. So, trying to put good things in there, sometimes we put avocado in, or sometimes, kale or something, just different things to try it out. Peach and carrots.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end of these community chats. So what will be your take-home message, ladies, for those frustrated moms out there, I think if you're a mother, you've been through that, no matter what, because one way or another, I have to tell a story as a registered dietitian. I supposedly did everything by the book. And when my daughter started at school, as we said, you start to socialize, you start to see different things. She was looking at everybody's lunch and looking at what she had. And of course, she didn't like it. And then she started hating greens. And I was like, what do you mean you hate greens? And she said, yeah, I hate greens because everybody in the school hates greens. So, and then even though she ate a lot of vegetables, I had a hard time getting her out of that phase because nobody ate the vegetables and she didn't want to be the one eating them. So I know we've all been through this and it's very hard. So what's your take home message for those moms out there who are like about to give it up?
I would say,
Gabriela, okay, Marcela, go ahead.
oh, I'll start. It'll be repeated exposures. So don't give up. It might take, like we mentioned that we throw out the number 20 before. It might be 20 times, but it might be years, right? So maybe like Sandra just said, like it took a while for her to get her daughter out of the hating green. So it might take a few years, but I think as you continue modeling, exposing kids, and also just kind of like focusing on like more like a weekly meal pattern, right? So you don't have, the kids don't have to eat like fruits and veggies every day. But if you're noticing throughout the week, they're getting foods from different food groups. They're getting their grains, some dairy, some fruits, some veggies, some proteins. Just kind of looking at the bigger picture in that way.
Gabrielle?
Mom, you're doing your best. You got this. It's going to seem a lot of times, it is very frustrating and your kid's not doing what you expect them to do and you're doing it for their best. And it's okay. You're doing your best. And I think it's also important for moms to remember, like, sometimes you might just need to take a day off from trying. Just like take a breather, take a step back, and then start again. And tomorrow's a new day, right? Take your small wins where you can get them and then try again tomorrow.
Yes, thank you, Gabriela. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think those are good perspectives. And I think it's hard as a parent because many people, when your child is born, you're like, I'm going to do it this way and that way, and I'm going to make everything so wonderful for my child. And I think being a parent is a process of realizing all the things you don't control. And so you have to really start to think about, what do I control? And what do I definitely not control? And maybe some things are also not worth controlling, right? So you want to try to provide a really positive eating experience for your child and show your joy in eating healthy foods and make them available. But you don't want to be frustrated or upset or get into a battle of wills over what your child is eating, right? You want to just bring the best things you can. And if, like I said, I'm a registered dietitian, and some of the things that I know I'm supposed to do, I am able to do really well with my kids. And some of them I'm not, even though I'm a nutritionist. So that's part of it. But I think overall, they're pretty happy and they're eating pretty well. And that is good enough for me.
Yeah, I think that it's important to do a couple of things. One is, you're doing your best. As mothers, we all try to do our best. It might not be the best of the best, but it's our best. So we need to feel proud of that. And another thing is, if you're really, really concerned, make sure that it's not a physiological thing going on. So bring your child to the doctor. And if everything is okay with your child, that's great. You need affirmation on that sometimes. And then why not look for the help of a registered dietitian? You see how many ideas you can get in an hour. So if you get the help of a registered dietitian, you're gonna get a lot of ideas, and you can get some of that frustration out of you because you're gonna be able to express it. So that's not a bad thing for us as mothers to have, an outlet to what we're feeling. And keep trying. And it's a phase. Remember, it's a phase. Kids usually grow out of that phase and they'll be better a couple of years later. But listen what I'm saying, years. So sometimes we want this magic bullet that our kids are gonna just start eating everything that we give them right away, and that doesn't happen that way. Especially the toddler years are very hard. Well, with this, we are getting to the end of this community chats. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, Merced, Gabriela, and Jessica, for being with us today. Thank you for all your words of advice. I hope this is helpful to all of our attendees today and people who are going to watch this recording. If you have any other questions, here we are at Montefiore Nyack, so just email us or you know, again, make an appointment with one of the dietitians and hopefully you get the solution you're looking for. And thank you so much for being with us today. Let me see very quickly. I forgot what we're doing next week. Oh, it's the course of medicine cabinets. Yes, there are a lot of things that we sometimes forget in our medicine cabinets, and they cannot be as good as we think. So let's join us next week for medication reconciliation and to talk about different medications. It's a whole chapter dedicated to pharma. And well, thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.